Welcome to Journey to Jerusalem here at Grange Methodist Church. As we come towards Easter, we have prayer stations here exploring the last week of Jesus' life and some of the stories from the Bible. So we begin with Jesus entering Jerusalem on a donkey, coming for the Passover festival, the festival of freedom, when the Jews would celebrate their nation escaping slavery in Egypt and being brought out by God into freedom. Filled with all sorts of hopes, the crowds shouted Hosanna. Perhaps you can hear them in the background, and we've invited people to write their own graffiti with their hopes on this graffiti wall. The first place that Jesus went in Jerusalem was the temple, and in the outer courts of the temple it was filled with the noisy marketplace of people buying and selling the animals for sacrifice and changing the money into the special temple money. Jesus was angry to see that this place of prayer was now full of noise, and he chased out the money changers, turning over their tables, and chased out the animals. I wonder what makes you angry. What would you like to see changed? Or what does God want to see changed in the world? There were lots of people in Jerusalem who wanted to know more about Jesus and the things he was saying and doing. Somebody invited Jesus to dinner, and while they were eating, a woman came in who hadn't been invited, carrying a jar of perfume. She broke the jar of perfume and poured it over Jesus' head and feet, and the whole house was filled with the smell. Some of the people at dinner were angry and said that the perfume should have been sold rather than wasting it. But Jesus said, "No, she has done a beautiful thing. What she did for me will always be remembered." We've invited people here to put some scented hand cream on their hands as a reminder that there's always something that we can do, however difficult a situation seems. On the night before Jesus died, he met with his friends for a meal. Before the meal, he took a bowl of water and a towel, and he washed his disciples' feet, just like a slave would. This seemed a very strange thing to do, and Peter objected. You can see in the picture here, Peter with his feet in the bowl, saying, "No, not my feet." And in the dirty water, Jesus' face is reflected. I wonder what their hopes were as they prepared to celebrate the Passover, that festival of freedom. What freedom were they hoping for? Were they hoping for freedom to wash one another's feet, or something else? After washing his friends' feet, Jesus shared the meal with them. He took bread and wine. He gave them the bread and said, "This is my body." And as he gave them the cup of wine, he said, "This is my blood." I wonder if this is the freedom that they were hoping for. And here's a picture of Jesus sharing that bread and wine with his friends. Again, you can see Jesus' face reflected, this time in the cup of wine, as we see the scene from Jesus' perspective. After they'd eaten the meal, Jesus went out in the darkness into a garden to pray. He knew that he had tough times ahead of him, and he knew that he needed God's help with all that lay ahead. I think this is reassuring because it reminds us that Jesus knows what it is to struggle. He knows what it is to live with worries and troubles. And when we pray, Jesus is with us in that. He is always listening and can hear us, even if we don't say things out loud when we pray. While they were praying, one of the disciples, Judas, came to find Jesus, leading soldiers to come and arrest him. And he came to Jesus and greeted him with a kiss and betrayed him. Having been arrested, Jesus was taken to Pilate, the Roman governor. Now, Pilate was quite interested in who Jesus was and what he had to say. "Are you the king of the Jews?" he asked. Jesus' answer was quite confusing, but Pilate thought that Jesus was a good man and really wanted to release him. So he offered the crowd a choice. Pilate knew that he couldn't really win either way, so he said, "For your festival of freedom, I will offer you a prisoner to be released." He offered them the choice between Jesus and a murderer, Barabbas. But the crowd shouted, "We want Barabbas." I wonder if you were given a choice of one person to free and one person to be killed. What would you choose? Having given that choice to the crowd, Pilate washed his hands of the whole thing. The soldiers led Jesus away, and then they mocked him, they laughed at him, they dressed him up like a king in a purple robe and a cruel crown of thorns. They beat him and they spat on him, but Jesus didn't fight back. All through history, people who have protested and sought justice and freedom have found themselves imprisoned and put to death. We have some pictures here. I wonder who you would add. Jesus was led out of the city to a hill where he was crucified. On the cross, there was a sign hung at the top saying, "Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews." As he hung there dying, people said many different things about him. Some continued to tease him, saying, "If you are the King of the Jews, save yourself. Come down from the cross now, and we will believe it." Others were struck by the way that he died and said, "This man has done nothing wrong." One even said, "This is the Son of God." I wonder what you say about Jesus. By the time Jesus died, it was almost the beginning of the Sabbath, so there wasn't time to prepare his body for burial. So they quickly wrapped it in a cloth and laid him in a stone tomb. And they sealed the tomb with a large stone, intending to come back after the Sabbath to finish preparing his body. At daybreak, the day after the Sabbath, women came to the tomb with spices to anoint Jesus' body. But as they reached the tomb, they saw that the stone was rolled away. And inside, there were the grave clothes left lying there, but no body anywhere to be seen. They were confused and afraid. It was a confusing time, and there are different stories about what happened next. If you can find a Bible, you could read those different stories. I wonder what you feel all this means. Where does this story lead you?